Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is so great to have you with us today as we tackle something that I think is on absolutely everyone's mind right now.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, considering the state of the world on everyone's mind is definitely an accurate way to put it.
Absolutely. So, to kick things off, I want to plant a visual in your head. I want you to imagine you've spent, let's say, 30 years building a really complex, beautiful house.
Okay.
You poured the foundation, you framed the walls, you put in the wiring, the plumbing. I mean, everything connects perfectly.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A sturdy, well-built home.
Right. Now, imagine the paint has just dried.
Mm.
You take a step back, you look at your work, and then you pick up a sledgehammer and you just start smashing the walls down.
That sounds like absolute madness. Why would anyone do that?
It sounds crazy, right? But if you look at the global economy right now, here in February 2026, that is essentially the metaphor for what's happening. Since Donald Trump returned to the Oval Office in January 2025, we aren't just seeing a few policy tweaks. We're witnessing what I'm calling a massive economic rewrite.
It really is. It's a complete restructuring. I mean, it's a demolition and a reconstruction happening at the same time. We're seeing factories going quiet in parts of Europe, supply chains that have existed for decades being just ripped up overnight.
Exactly. And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out, is this just chaos? Is it just someone flailing around with a sledgehammer?
Or is there a plan?
Or is there actually a blueprint behind the demolition? And maybe most importantly for you listening right now, who is actually picking up the tab for this Fortress America strategy.
That is the trillion-dollar question, because usually when you break a system that's been running the world for decades, well, the bill comes due pretty quickly.
So let's unpack this. To really understand where we are today in 2026, we actually have to rewind a bit. This didn't just start last year, did it?
No, not at all. If you want the origin story of this strategy, you have to go back to around 2018. That was really the first act of this drama. It started with America first, but specifically, the weapon of choice was steel and aluminum.
I remember this, the tariffs.
Yes. But it's important to remember the justification they used. They invoked a specific clause regarding national security. The argument was that the U.S. relied too heavily on foreign steel to build ships, planes, tanks.
Right.
If you don't have your own steel, the argument went, you can't defend yourself.
Which, if you look at it in a vacuum, sounds like a logical defense strategy. You don't want to rely on an adversary for your tank armor.
Of course. But here's where it gets interesting and a little messy. They didn't just slap tariffs on enemies.
They hit allies.
They hit allies. Canada, Mexico, the European Union.
That must have been a shock.
It was a huge shock. I mean, take Canada. We're talking about one of America's closest allies. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apparently found out about these tariffs from the morning news, not a phone call.
Ouch. That's rough. Imagine having dinner with your neighbor, and the next morning you see on TV that they basically declared economic war on you.
Trudeau called it an insult, and he wasn't wrong, but what followed was a masterclass in political retaliation. You see, the European Union didn't just get mad.
They got strategic.
They got a map. They didn't just tax American stuff randomly. They went sniper mode.
I love this detail.
They did. They looked at the U.S. electoral map and asked, where do the most powerful Republicans live? And they targeted goods from those specific districts.
That is brutal efficiency. So what did they hit?
They targeted Kentucky bourbon.
Why? Ah, right. Mitch McConnell.
Because that's the home state of the Senate Republican leader at the time. They targeted Harley-Davidson motorcycles.
Wisconsin, a massive swing state.
Exactly. And Levi's jeans from California. They turned a trade dispute into a direct political headache for specific Republicans.
But those were just the opening skirmishes, right? The main event was, and still is, China.
The China escalation was different. It wasn't surgical. It was a blunt force instrument. It started one night in July, back then, with tariffs on $34 billion worth of goods.
And China didn't blink, did they?
Not for a second. The very next morning, Beijing retaliated dollar for dollar, $34 billion on U.S. goods.
And they aimed right at the political base.
Right at the heart of Trump's base. Soybeans, pork, cars. They hit the farmers in the Midwest.
And it just spiraled so fast. It went from 34 billion to 60 billion, then up to 200 billion. It wasn't just noise anymore.
No, at that point, supply chains actually started to physically move because companies just couldn't absorb the cost.
That's the breaking the house part. Companies couldn't just wait it out.
They had to react.
So let's bring this to the present, to 2026. We talk about billions and trillions and eyes start to glaze over. I want to look at what this actually costs regular people. Let's talk about the crossover.
The standard American family vehicle, a perfect example.
Right. You walk into a dealership today to buy a regular mid-range crossover SUV. Nothing fancy. It has a sticker that says assembled in the US.
Sure, but let's look under the hood.
Let's break it down.
Okay, so the engine likely came from Mexico. The complex electronics, the sensors, the chips that run the touchscreen.
Taiwan or South Korea?
Taiwan or South Korea. The battery, if it's a hybrid, is probably Korean. And the steel for the body is at least partially imported.
Now let's apply the tariff math we are living with.
Here comes the bill. You have a 10% tariff on that Mexican engine. You have 15% on the battery. You have 25% on the steel.
And these are not small numbers.
No. When you add all those up, by the time we hit 2025, those tariffs added roughly $3,000 to the cost of that single vehicle.
$3,000. That's not dealer markup. That's not inflation. That is just pure tariff cost.
That is the cost of the policy, yeah.
That is huge. And here's the misconception I hear all the time. People think the foreign country pays that money.
Right. That is the biggest myth. Foreign countries don't pay that tax. The importer pays it. And the importer, the car company, passes it right on to you.
So the American buyer is effectively cutting a check to the U.S. government for the privilege of buying a car with foreign parts.
Precisely. And if you zoom out, the Federal Reserve of New York ran the numbers. The average American family is paying an extra $1,000 every single year just because of these tariffs.
On everything.
On clothes, electronics, appliances. It's a hidden subscription fee for the trade war.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay.
So if the goal was to hurt China and bring jobs back, did it work? Because if China is out, someone else has to be in.
Well, the companies had to go somewhere. They couldn't afford the 30% markup on Chinese goods. So initially, we saw the rise of the Vietnam miracle.
I've seen the stats on this. Exports from Vietnam to the U.S. Tripled in just 7 years. It sounds like a huge win for them.
It looks like a win on paper. You know, factories springing up, ports buzzing in Hanoi. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch.
Researchers started digging into this data. It turns out about 60% of this growth wasn't new manufacturing. It was something called transshipment.
Transshipment. That's a fancy word for changing the label, isn't it?
Pretty much. Think of it as laundering goods. Components get shipped from Shenzhen, China to Vietnam. Workers there maybe assemble a final piece or literally just slap a Made in Vietnam sticker on the box and then ship it to the U.S.
So they're laundering the goods to avoid the tariff.
Exactly. But by 2024 and 2025, U.S. Customs caught on. They started seizing shipments, demanding proof of origin. So that loophole started closing.
Which brings us to the real heavyweight champion of this shift, Mexico.
Mexico has officially overtaken China as the U.S.'s top trading partner.
Ooh.
Exports grew to nearly $400 billion.
Geography is destiny, right?
In this new world, yes. Companies are prioritizing proximity over pure efficiency. They want the factory close enough that a tariff war or a shipping crisis won't shut them down.
And we're seeing this China plus one strategy really take hold.
Right. Take Apple, for example. They keep a foothold in China to sell to the Chinese market. But for the U.S. and Europe, they're building parallel supply chains in India and elsewhere.
They're duplicating the system.
Yes, which sounds expensive, building 2 factories to do the job of one.
It is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And inefficient. But it's the price of insurance against political chaos.
Okay, so we've rearranged where we buy our stuff, but there's another massive pillar to this economic rewiring, and that's energy.
Oh, yeah.
The philosophy in Washington right now is very clear. Drill, baby, drill.
It's a complete reversal from the previous administration.
A complete 180. In January 2025, the U.S. exited the Paris Agreement again, and they started systematically dismantling the Inflation Reduction Act, which was Biden's big green subsidy package.
So while the U.S. is doubling down on oil and gas, what's everyone else doing?
They're going in the exact opposite direction. Europe and China are sprinting toward green tech. China currently controls something like 70% of the global solar and battery production.
That feels like a dangerous divergence.
It's a huge gamble. The U.S. logic is, we have cheap oil and gas, let's use it to lower manufacturing costs right now. And it's true, a U.S. factory pays about 1/3 of the electricity cost compared to a European one.
So in the short term, American factories have a huge advantage.
Yes, but the long-term risk is massive. Europe is introducing something called the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
That sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare. What is it?
It's a tax on dirty imports. If you want to sell steel or cement to Europe and you made it using dirty energy, you pay a penalty.
So the U.S. might save money on energy bills here, but they get slapped with a tax when they try to sell the product abroad.
Exactly. And beyond the tax, there's the issue of innovation. I mean, if the whole world moves to green tech and you're the only one refining better ways to bring oil, you lock yourself out of the future economy.
It's like perfecting the typewriter while everyone else is learning to code.
That is a very apt analogy.
Now, I want to pivot to something that hits even closer to home. We talked about goods, talked about energy. Let's talk about people. Labor.
This is perhaps the most immediate shock to the domestic economy.
In spring 2025, the administration initiated a mass deportation program. We're talking about targeting up to 11 million people.
And regardless of where you stand on the politics of immigration, the economic reality hit hard and fast.
Which industries took the punch?
Agriculture and construction. These sectors rely so heavily on migrant labor. We saw crops literally left rotting in the fields in California because there was no one to pick them. We saw construction sites in Texas go silent.
And when supply drops,
prices rise. This labor shortage triggered a wage hike, which contributed to an 8% inflation spike, specifically in food and housing.
So the Fortress America walls went up, the workers were pushed out, and now my groceries cost 8% more. But here's the twist, and this is where the tech comes in. If you can't find a human to do the job, what do?
You buy a robot.
We are seeing an automation boom, aren't we?
It is huge. Orders for industrial robots rose 30%. Logistics automation, I'm talking warehouse robots, rose 40%. Companies realize that if cheap labor is gone forever, they have to replace it with capital. They have to buy machines.
So we're fundamentally changing the structure of the job market, swapping people for tech.
And that leads us directly into the next piece of the puzzle, the AI industrial complex.
This feels like the new moonshot, the $500 billion national AI plan.
It is massive. The goal is to make the U.S. the undisputed global center of AI. But, and connecting the dots here is crucial, you cannot have an AI boom without the energy policy we just discussed.
Because AI is hungry.
Voracious. Data centers consume massive amounts of power, more than small cities. You can't run a global AI infrastructure on expensive or intermittent energy. You need baseload power, and you need it cheap.
So Drill Baby Drill isn't just about cars. It's about servers.
It is absolutely about servers. They are slashing environmental regulations to build power plants and data centers at record speed. It's a trade-off. We accept the environmental cost to win the AI race.
And the markets love this, right?
Oh, Wall Street loved it. Tech stocks soared 40% in late 2025. But it creates a fascinating digital divide.
How so?
Because only the giants, Google, Microsoft, the trillion-dollar clubs, can compete for this level of power and chip supply. The barrier to entry just got mile high.
So we are consolidating power in the hands of the few, powered by fossil fuels, protected by tariffs. It's a vibe.
It is a very specific vision of the future.
Let's touch on one last pillar before we wrap up. Health. Late 2025, the U.S. exited the World Health Organization.
The logic here follows everything else we've discussed. Sovereignty. American medicine for Americans.
But viruses don't respect borders or tariffs.
They do not, and this is the risk. By pulling out, we break the global disease monitoring mechanism. While U.S. pharma companies are getting huge government contracts to stockpile drugs domestically, the rest of the world is forming new alliances.
Like who?
Europe and China are coordinating their own health standards.
So if a new pandemic hits?
The phone lines are cut. The coordination mechanism is broken. We're betting that we can wall ourselves off from biology just like we walled ourselves off from trade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try to bring this all together. We've covered a lot. Tariffs, cars, Vietnam, Mexico, oil, robots, AI, and health. When you look at this mosaic, what do you see?
I see the construction of a closed-loop economy.
Explain that.
The U.S. isn't just fixing trade deals. It's building a self-contained ecosystem. Think about the cycle. You extract cheap domestic energy. You use that energy to power domestic factories and massive AI data centers.
Okay.
You protect those factories with high tariffs so foreign competitors can't undercut you. And because you don't have cheap labor anymore, you operate the whole thing with robots.
It's a machine that feeds itself.
Ideally, yes. But the so what here is profound. The U.S. is gaining independence, absolutely. But it is losing connection.
It sounds almost...
In a modern sense, yes. It's a return to a model where the U.S. extracts what it needs, resources, talent, capital from allies, but keeps all the high-value tech and production inside the fortress. It's not the global village anymore.
It's Fortress America.
Exactly.
And looking at the numbers, GDP is up, unemployment is low.
Yeah.
It seems to be working.
On paper, today, yes. But here's the provocative thought I want to leave you with. Can a fortress America survive in the long run if the rest of the world builds a new system without it?
That is the scary part. If Europe, China, and the rest of Asia create their own standards, their own trade networks, their own green technology, do we isolate ourselves to prosperity?
Or do we isolate ourselves into irrelevance? That is the trillion-dollar question.
It really is. We are trading efficiency and connection for control and security. And as we look at this rewired economy, I want you, the listener, to ask yourself, is the price of that wall worth it?
It's a question every consumer and every voter will be answering with their wallet for years to come.
Indeed. We will be watching closely as the walls continue to go up. Thank you so much for listening to this deep dive.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.